Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Geeked Out. This week, as I'm sure many of you know, Disney Plus started a new series or mini series in their MCU Marvel Universe with Echo, and we decided that in honor of that, we were going to go back to February 14th, Valentine's Day of 2003, and watch Daredevil.
Ooh. When it come out? That's when it came out?
It came out Valentine's Day of '03, so this movie is almost 20 years old. It'll be 20 years old in just a few weeks from now. And this movie starred Ben Affleck, Jennifer Garner, Michael Clark Duncan, Colin Farrell, and Jon Favreau. It has a 5.3 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
Mm.
And on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 43% critic score and a 35% audience score, making this, according to their scale, a rotten movie.
That's
And
bullshit.
I
That's not rotten at all.
I disagree. I am not a personally. I am not a fan of this movie. Where we'll
Mm.
start with this. How did you first come to this? Did you see it in theaters? Was it a rental for you? Or
I
do you remember?
I don't remember because I've seen so many movies. And I've gone to the theater to see a lot of movies. I wouldn't doubt that I seen this in theaters just because, you know, it was a tradition with my father, still is, to go to the theaters to see movies, and we both kind of like superhero action movies. So I most likely I did see this in theaters.
Okay. Now I know that I know I saw this in theaters, and I only say that because, and to this day, it for me has been one of the more upsetting,
Oh my god, cause yeah,
disapp-
cause
disappointing theater going experiences, and I only say that because Daredevil for me is my favorite superhero character. When I was a kid, the first my family and I were on vacation, and I went to a flea market of all places and bought a stack of comic books. And if there were 10 books in there, I would say eight of them were Daredevil. And so that was my first real introduction into the world of comics. And ever since then, just the idea of not only being a superhero but him also being blind was something that I always thought was really cool. So when I went and saw this movie, I was fucking hyped, dude. And when I walked out of that theater, I just kind of went like,
you were equally hype, right?
no, I was like, what did you do to my favorite? Like, what did you do to Matt Murdock? Like, just, oh,
Too harsh on everybody's being too harsh on this this awesome movie.
I mean, you know what? Had I not been such a fan of the character, I might have liked it. I could see myself enjoying it more, but because I don't know. I think for I just for me it just wasn't what I expected. Now I I'm trying not to compare it to the Netflix show that they did, that they're going to be.
There
Um,
are a lot of comparisons though.
well, what I'm doing, like I'm trying not to compare it to that because that show is exactly what this movie should have been, in my opinion. Whereas you and I had kind of discussed off the pod that this movie is a little bit campy, whereas the actual Daredevil is so dark and brooding. And this movie kind of they had it a little bit, but in comparison to the show, they really shied away from it, where the show kind of embraced it or embraces it. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming that when Disney Plus does the reboot or whatever you want to call it, of the show, they're going to do the same kind of thing. I hope they do, anyways, because much like a character like DC's Batman, Daredevil is a very dark type of character, which might say
Yep.
more about me because those are my two favorite superheroes.
He is a dark character, but he's also a tragic character. Like
He's a very tragic character.
he's a type of character and very religious, very at odds with his faith versus what he feels like he needs to do in order to, you know, save lives and prevent further harm. And yeah, that struggle is it definitely makes for a lot of great stories. I could,
Well, which is one of my favorite things in the show is it's in the first season. It's when you see him at confessional with the priest, and he says, "I'm not here asking forgiveness for what I've done. I'm here asking forgiveness for what I'm about to do." And it's kind of that thing where he knows that it's wrong, but at the same time, the people, because typically, if you read the comics, if you're not looking at the big villains like the Bullseyes or the Kingpins or things like that, the majority of I guess villains or enemies that Daredevil goes after is usually people who are guilty but have kind of skirted the law and escaped on like a technicality or played the system, um, type of thing. So he then takes that vigilante justice into his own hands when the
like
courts fail.
like Dexter.
That was the exact comparison I was thinking of in my head.
Well, they're actually pretty damn similar in this movie because unlike the comics, this motherfucking Daredevil kills people, bro. This motherfucker was killing people, man.
Hey, hold on 1 second. Did you watch the theatrical or the director's cut?
I watched the director's cut, but I've seen the
So then,
theater.
who does he kill?
He kills the guy in like the opening scene, and then he also kills.
Oh yes, you're talking. Okay, yes.
Yeah,
Don't, because I was gonna say, don't say he kills Bullseye. Spoiler alert.
no, I mean
I don't remember if that final scene was in the theatrical or if it was just the director's cut, because it's been quite a while since I've watched this movie, but I did watch the director's cut for this, and
he
I
thought.
forgot that the director's cut was like 25 minutes longer or something like that.
Yeah, there's like a couple scene because I watched the DVD and a lot of the deleted scenes are in the director's cut. It was just like little scenes of, with evolving Daredevil, Matt Murdock, and whatever.
Oh,
But
and
yeah,
it's the whole Coolio plot.
yeah, the majority is that subplot with Coolio, is what I was revving up to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched the director's cut, and overall, it definitely makes the movie a tad bit better.
I will agree the director's cut is better than the theatrical version because it, if you've seen both versions and you watch the director's cut and then you watch the theatrical cut, when you miss those things with Coolio or the little scenes that they've cut out, and then you watch the theatrical version, it seems disjointed. Like where they decided to edit it and take those things out, it seems really poorly paced and kind of hard to get through, if that makes sense. Whereas it seems like more of a complete story and complete film when you watch the director's cut in its entirety.
I agree. Yeah, it definitely, for whatever reason, the person editing the theatrical cut did a poor job because it felt like something was missing, and
Yeah,
it makes sense when you watch the director's cut because it feels like a complete movie.
yeah. Now, so for a little background on the character for people who might not be familiar, um, Matt Murdock, who is the alter ego or the alias, whatever you want to call it, of Daredevil, was originally introduced in issue Daredevil #1 back in 1964. He was created, of course, by Stan Lee and illustrated by Bill Everett, who, fun fact about him, he also created Namor, the Submariner. I didn't know that until I was doing my research for this.
Damn, he's been in the game for a while.
He was in the game year, but he actually, in my research, I found out that he actually passed away in like 1973.
Damn, R.I.P.
So the amount of things that he could have contributed had he not passed away, I don't know how he died or anything like that, but it's kind of interesting. But Matt Murdock is he's a kid. He's a guy who grew up in Hell's Kitchen. His father was, as this movie shows, he was a boxer, um, and also kind of a low-level goon for a mob boss. And Matt doesn't like that his dad does that, like not the fighting, but the mob boss work. But when he's a child, I cannot remember the exact age that the comic has him when this happens, but he is the victim of an accident where he's blinded by a radioactive substance that falls out of a truck that's out of control, and it happens to him. Unlike the movie, so this movie, when it happens, he discovers that his dad is um, an enforcer for this mob boss, and he kind of runs away, like running away from him more or less. And it happens that a forklift on some job site runs into these barrels, and he gets splashed with this liquid. Um, the actual origin in the comics is much closer to what happens in the television show, where it happens as he pushes a man. He's pushing somebody out of the way, out of a out of the way of an out of control truck that has these chemicals on the back of it, and that's what splashes his eyes. So he gains these abilities, these super senses when he loses his vision, and he does it while himself being a hero, even at a young age.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they stole this origin from the Amazing or the Spider-Man cartoon, because I think that's the origin
That they use there.
they use. I'm pretty sure because I recognize that's like that happening, and I thought that's how he got into the comic books. To be honest, I didn't realize that he.
No, it was different.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm pretty sure. Like I say, I could be wrong because it's been a few years since I've watched the first season of the Netflix show. But I think the show um,
yeah.
does
No,
it that same way.
it opens. Yeah, it opens with him saving or him on the ground with the chemical in his eyes, but he does. Somebody in the background mentions that the boy saved him or something. I recognize that scene, that
Yeah.
opening. But yeah, it's definitely closer to the comics. But I appreciate, it's very convenient that it happened, but it's not as accurate in the comics, but it worked for me. But again, I'm not the Daredevil expert here.
Well, I wouldn't call myself an expert. I'm just a very big fan. But
Compared to
yeah,
me,
well, yeah, okay, I guess.
you're the resident Daredevil expert on this team.
But yeah, it like you say, it is very believable the way they did it in this film. Um, because if they would have done it where he pushed somebody out of the way, then they wouldn't have been able to fold in the storyline of him being upset or hurt that his dad has been lying to him. And because in the movie, according to his dad, played by Keith David, I believe, I always get him and David Keith mixed up. Both good actors, but very
Keith
different.
David is from The Thing.
Sorry, this is David Keith. I
they need they
Dude,
need
I
to
do
star,
this every
they need to
time.
star in a they need to star in a movie together.
Oh God,
A buddy cop action movie.
I do every time I bring up these guys, I do the same thing. But
It makes sense. It's okay.
so yeah,
We caught
his father is David Keith. Um, Yeah, so because Matt is so upset when he finds out what happens to him, he runs away, and that's the inciting incident. Had they done that, and then while he's running away, also saved somebody, I think would have been a little too much. So it does, like you say, it does make sense in the context of the way they filmed this movie. Also, in this film, after he loses his vision, he kind of convinces his dad, like, to stop working for this mob boss and to really get back into boxing. And um, they kind of feed off of one another. Whereas while his dad is training, Matt is learning Braille and learning to hone his skills, because he realizes that when he lost his vision, his other four senses are heightened to superhuman levels, basically. And it gives him, I love this character, but I hate this term. But it gives him a type of radar vision, um, which is shown in the movie, radar or sonar vision, which is shown in the film. Um, that basically, just like you would expect sonar, that sound would go out and vibrate off of objects, and he can kind of see the world around him. Now, this was used in the comics. Just, I mean, I'm pretty sure that in this film, it's used more in the length of this film than probably, I don't know how many comic books, but it wasn't used nearly this often to my recollection in the comics. It seems like every other scene that he's on screen, you get some kind of version of this, which is understandable for a visual medium like a movie, because you want the director and everybody wants the viewer to see kind of what he's seeing, but it just looks so stupid.
Yeah. Plus, it was at the early stages of CG being dominant in movies, so I guarantee the director just wanted some cool CGI shit as much as possible.
Well, that's my whole thing with this movie, and I've said it before. The CGI in this movie is awful.
There's
Like
one particular scene that is like goddamn noticeably horribly bad.
oh, there's a few of them.
I can't defend the CG in this movie. I'm not going to. I will agree. The CG is goddamn awful.
I mean, we even talked about it off the pod. Is just, I think it was a year before this Spider-Man came out, and there is bad CGI in Spider-Man, but a lot of the CGI in Spider-Man that's bad is just him. And it's specifically the scene where he first gets his powers and he's jumping from roof to roof and swinging and things like that. Whereas, but it still at least looks like he's on actual buildings. Whereas if you watch this, a lot of the bad CGI happens where it looks like the people are CGI'd as well as the set. So it makes it that much worse and that much more noticeable, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. The CG is definitely noticeably bad because these motherfuckers go from human beings to these puppet Gumby looking creatures, and it kind of takes you out of it a little bit, as just in those moments.
I mean, I'm gonna get to, yeah, this those are bad, but I'm gonna get to more of my gripes with the specifically the CGI and the radar vision at later points when we get to the parts that it really kind of bug me when it's really used. But for now, I just wanted to kind of bring it up and kind of preface that whole thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I got a lot of. I mean, we can get to a lot of the negatives, but let's start with quite a few positives because I do, man. I think for the most part, the choice of actors I enjoyed, man. There's one that I believe should have been casted to a more ethnically accurate person. But other than that, I agree to with the casting.
Wait a
I
minute.
think strong cast. They're all
Do you,
strong actors.
do you not believe Jennifer Garner as being Greek?
No, with green eyes. No.
So that's another thing I don't know. Anybody to people listening, if you're not a fan of Daredevil, or if you haven't seen any of his stuff or read any comics, Elektra. So Jennifer Garner plays a character named Elektra Nachios, and she is of Greek descent.
Is her
And
last name Nachos? It's not Nachos Villamano, like
no,
all the Greek last names.
it's just Nachios.
I'm just teasing Greek people, man.
Um, and so if you watch if you look at Jennifer Garner, don't get me wrong, Jennifer Garner is a great actress. She's very enjoyable to watch in a lot of her
She's
movies.
I've never watched Alias,
I've never
but
watched Alias either.
she's always been an okay-ish actor.
I've
When it
always thought she was pretty good.
13, yeah, she's
Yes,
okay.
I'm thinking of 13 going on 30 as well.
Yeah, because that's like really the only thing anybody can go up. She it was never stand out with her acting. She's always just been fine with me. She's fine.
Yeah, she's never been phenomenal or anything like that, but she's always
I,
been good and serviceable for what she does on screen. But I don't think anybody's ever looked at Jennifer Garner and went, "You're Greek, aren't you?" But
no.
that's who they decided to cast, and oddly enough, this is how her and Ben Affleck met and ended up getting married and all that stuff, which is funny because one of the notes that I have that I wrote down while watching this is between the two of them, they have almost no chemistry whatsoever on screen. I mean, she's supposed to be.
It's
No, it's bad, dude. And if you just want
I
an
think it's
example of that,
magnified. I
the
think it's
playground
magnified.
fight.
I think it's magnified by just the dialogue. The dialogue, the writing for the dialogue in this movie is just in a lot of the scenes is just atrocious and very corny and cheesy and things people wouldn't say even close in real life.
It is really bad. Like, I mean, the first time that he meets her, I think it's in a coffee shop. He goes up and he introduces himself, and he she's looking down, and he's very clearly a blind man, but she's looking down, and he asks if she could pass him the honey, and she's like, "Yeah, it's right there." And he's like, "Could you be more specific?" And she goes, "What are you?" And she looks up, and he just goes, "Blind?" Yeah, I am. Like, and then when they have their little back and forth, and he says to her, "Oh, I didn't get your name," and she just goes, "I didn't give it," and walks away. And I'm like, that's not how people talk to each other.
No.
And then that scene is followed up by one of the worst
Hey,
choreographed. No,
what's
one
your mouth?
of the worst choreographed scenes I
Hey.
have ever seen in a movie.
For the most part, the choreography in this movie, aside from this scene, is pretty good, especially the opening scene where he's fighting those goons in the bar. That was good. But
See, that's good. Any one-on-one fight that he has, I think looks terrible. The choreography.
I can't really defend the choreography.
And
Again,
also the whole thing with their thing on the playground is it's what I've heard on other mediums referred to as a flirt fight. um it's so
right?
bad. Like it's bad, and it's if you watch a lot of action movies or superhero movies or martial arts, anything like that, you're used to people moving at a relatively fast speed. These two look like they're moving in slow motion.
Yeah, it's more of a dance than a an
That
actual fight.
that's exactly what it looks like. The only cool part is when they both like do a backflip or whatever it is, and they land on opposite sides of two teeter totters with their one foot on either one. That is literally the only cool part of that, and It's a split-second shot in a.
Matt Murdock throws his fucking walking stick up in the air, takes his jacket off, and that motherfucker comes back down and catches that shit perfect. That shit was tight.
With one of the stupidest looking poses that I've ever seen.
Unrealistic as fuck. But, you know, I like that shit. And shout out to Matt Murdock for completely shattering the illusion that he's a blind man. Almost instantly to this random chick that he just met. He just gave away his entire identity as Daredevil just so he could get this chick's name. Shit's crazy.
Yeah.
But hey, you know, I get
some
it.
of the decisions that, like you say, some of the decisions that the screenwriter and the director made, who is the same person. The person who wrote and directed this movie is a gentleman named Mark Steven Johnson.
That's your first clue right there. That's a first red flag.
He has not done much in terms of his in terms of his filmography of movies that he's directed. So kind of looking back at what he did in his career before this, or even after it, I kind of went, yeah, I'm not really surprised. I mean, this is the man who directed Ghost Rider, for fuck's sakes. No, don't defend that piece of shit either.
Yeah, I could.
Can't. Not even.
I could.
One of my favorites in Nicolas Cage could save that movie.
Those Nick Cage abs. Those Nick Cage abs.
He's the only good part of that movie.
Hey, what's her name? Eva Mendes.
Oh, Eva Mendes. She's good in that movie too. Not as an actress, but
just to look at. Can I just look at her for an hour? I'll do that. I'd pay to see that show. But no, that's another movie that I could defend. It's not. It's one of those okay, terrible movies. I like terrible early 2000 movies. That's my guilty pleasure, okay? These are my guilty pleasure movies, and I will defend them when I need to.
Well, you need to with this one because
got my gloves on.
Right off the bat, within the first few minutes of this movie. So, like I said, it's kind of with him and his dad training. Like, it shows him just basically. The funniest part is when he's just like leaning over the edge of the building, the roof that the building that they live in, and he taps his cane, and it's just like a metal rod that's just going down on an angle, and he just fucking hits the cane on it, knows where it is, and he just hops on and slides down on his feet. And it shows him like kind of training himself, which was my number one complaint to start off this movie, because
that was kind of ridiculous. I'm not gonna lie. Like, ain't no way. I didn't know his origin that much.
I'm gonna tell you
at the time. I know now, but at that time, I didn't know. Even I didn't believe it. I was like, he just taught himself.
Oh yeah,
the acrobatic martial arts.
Well, so for those of you who have not read any Daredevil comics or have not seen the Netflix show, Matt later in his life, as he's trying to hone his abilities and his senses and things like that, he ends up falling under the tutelage of a mysterious stranger who is also blind named Stick. And Stick eventually helps him become an incredibly talented and expert martial artist, and gives him the tools that he needs to really take his extra senses and use them in a consistent way that helps him as Daredevil. And the fact that even if they didn't show him in this movie, but even if he were to like talk about him or even if it was just a one quick scene, like, oh, that's when I met Stick, and he taught me how to do or use my abilities and things like that, and that was all you got. I would have taken that. You don't even get that. No, it's just this 10-year-old, 12-year-old kid, whatever, is just on rooftops in Hell's Kitchen, New York, just learning these things. Like, it shows him doing handstands on the edge of a building. I'm like, no fucking way. Like
That's how. That's not how he trains in the comics, by doing handstands right off the edge of a building.
or even if it was, he doesn't just do it by himself. Like, let's give this a try.
I'm gonna risk my life right now, right quick. Yeah, no, it is very j- unrealistic. Uh, it's just laughable.
I mean, it's funny we say unrealistic when we're talking about a movie based on a fucking comic book, but
I mean, still, you can at least,
you can have some sense of realism.
uh, and you can do that by just being more accurate to the comics, because the comics explained how he got good at
Well,
the
and
thing.
that's what I mean. I don't know why it was so difficult for them not to just, even like I say, put a quick little scene or just a quick line of him mentioning his name. And I'm even if they would have done something as small as that, I'm sure a lot of big Daredevil fans would have forgiven a lot of what this movie does for just doing that. But I could be wrong. I mean, I really don't know, but
No, no, it's it's again, it's a credit to the poor writing in
yeah.
this movie.
Yeah, and I mean this whole training sequence then leads into his dad in another fight, and he's approached, sorry, by this mob boss about throwing the fight because he finds out that all the other guys that he's fought since his comeback were controlled by this mobster and this whole thing. And when he sees Matt in the crowd cheering him on, he realizes I can't do this, and he ends up fighting back, and he wins the fight, and this eventually gets him killed. And from
Yeah,
that point on, Matt
he,
is he's an orphan, and again, that's where the whole Stick thing comes in the comics. Is now that he's on his own, Stick also helps raise him as well as teach him. So he's not he becomes a father figure as well. Like, I, this whole Stick thing really bothers me.
I get it. And this movie kind of drives home the fact that Daredevil is straight up Marvel's Batman by having his father die in a goddamn alleyway.
Yes, but there's no mother with pearls.
No, but the similarity and parallels are 100% there. And the fact that he mentions that he fights for justice.
Like, I think now the whole thing with him fighting for justice, I think the reason why they use that term is because he's also a lawyer.
True. But, you know,
So it's not just him saying like I'm going to make you pay or anything like that. It's I'm going to give justice because, like I said, if he's not dealing with one of his arch nemesis or arch nemesis, whatever the term is, he is just fighting people who've kind of skirted the justice system. So
oh yeah.
he's taking it into his own hands, which is something that I actually like about this. But
I mean, just saying, in this movie, it's I don't know if it was the director's intention, but the similarities between those two characters, aside from the actor playing the same character, the both characters, sorry, uh, very, I don't know, they're just very similar in this movie for me.
yeah, I
And
totally I
for
totally
some
agree
reason,
with that.
just I don't know it. I just That's something I noticed.
No, and you're completely right. if you just look at, if you were to just tell somebody and leave out the whole blind thing and just tell somebody, give them description of the two characters, Daredevil and Batman, they would probably not be able to differentiate between the two unless you said one of them is blind.
Well, there's
or
one
the
scene.
color of their suits.
Yeah, there's one scene where Daredevil is like, he says to Foggy, "I gotta suit up," and then we have the whole Joel Schumacher suit up scene, similar to
There's
those.
two of those.
Yeah,
We'll
so
get to
it's
the
like,
second one later because I have a lot of problems with that whole scene.
the similarities for me in this, when just my recent rewatch, I don't know, man, it just kept pointing it out for me. I couldn't help but see that.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from because before this, we had, in terms of comic book movies, other than the four Batman films, we had Spider-Man, X-Men, and then before that there was like Blade, Spawn, things like that. And I don't think any of those movies, except for the Schumacher Batmans, had a get the costume on or suit up montage type thing the way this and the Schumacher films did. So
No.
I get the comparison that you're going with. Um, yeah, and it even does, like you say, the zoom in like on the DD on his chest and all
Yeah.
that all that stuff. But the other thing, like, so after his in the movie, after his dad is killed, it's like everything just jumps forward 20 years or 15 years, whatever it is. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, he's a lawyer. This is Foggy, who he went to law school with, who he has a practice with. And it's like, wait a second, you can't give us 5 minutes to explain what the hell has been going on with him for the past 15 years or however long it's been.
No, the movie, yeah, the whole movie in general just feels rushed. I don't know how long the theatrical versus the director's cut is, and I think you said director's cut like an extra 20 minutes.
You know what? I'll double check
The
that
total
right now.
length of the movie, but even with the time given, it still feels freaking rushed. Like nothing, they don't let anything settle in with the characters. Like we don't really get a full explanation, or at least time for these characters to like.
Okay, sorry to cut you off. I just did look it up. It's a half an hour.
What's the theatrical? What's
So
the?
the theatrical is an hour 43, and, and the director's cut is 2 hours 13 minutes.
Holy crap! Yeah, they should have took that subplot and applied that extra time towards fleshing out Daredevil, Elektra, Bullseye, everyone. Basically, everybody should have been fleshed out a lot more because it just feels like we're speeding through this entire movie.
Yeah. Now I will say this. Um, in doing research on this, I did find something that actually kind of made me a little bit happy, and it's the fact that in an interview in 2023, Mark Steven Johnson, the writer and director of this movie, admitted in an interview that his big regret was to not tell a smaller story, and that in retrospect, he felt that putting the Daredevil origin story, the Elektra story, the court theme story in the director's cut, and a Kingpin story was too much for one movie, and he could not be more right.
Yeah, it's like he shoves three movie,
He did the Spider-Man 3 problem and put three villains in one movie.
but like three different like storyline, like
Three big storylines. Like if you look at a typical comic book run of, let's say, like 10, 12 issues, that could be, each one of these stories could be a 10 to 12 comic book issue. Whether it be introducing Elektra and her family, or the first run-in that he has with Kingpin or Bullseye or things like that. No, they jammed all of it into this one movie. And then they cut the movie by half an hour.
Yep.
And expected to get a coherent and enjoyable movie. Now, I will say, I think it's just because it was because of the IP. This movie made a decent amount of money. Like from what I was able to find, the budget was roughly around 78 million, and it made worldwide over 179 million. So it's not like this was a huge flop. It made over 100 million in profit, but it didn't go anywhere because I think most people who saw the movie were like, this isn't good. Like and they probably had a lot of the same issues that we are having watching it now, that there's so much jam packed into it. So as you continue this film, and you get Michael Clark Duncan revealed as the Kingpin, and he is one of the best parts of this movie. He's fantastic.
Oh yeah, he definitely understood the assignment, and he ate the scenery.
Oh, he chewed it up like crazy.
Each scene that he was in. I love Michael Clark Duncan. He's one of my favorite. Rest in peace, by the way. Um, yeah, man. I've always been a big fan of him.
I will say
And
one note that I wrote about him is he looks really, really weird smoking a cigar.
yeah, you could tell he really doesn't do that.
No, he was like, it was like he was half sticking his tongue out while he went to put the cigar in his mouth, and I'm like, this just doesn't look natural. I get that you might want that look for the character, but it doesn't look good, so maybe just take it out.
Yeah, thank goodness there's not too many scenes of him smoking. But other than that, yeah, man, and he's brutal in this movie. He's killing his henchmen like
I love that scene.
right. You could believe, because Michael Clark Duncan's such a huge man and muscular.
Well, he wasn't even big enough for the directors when he got this part. It was another thing that I found.
It's crazy because the man naturally walks around at 350 pounds.
Yeah, and he's 6'5". So I found a couple things when I was doing some research, and it said that he stands 6'5", and yet most of the time when he was on camera, he was standing on boxes or he was wearing lift shoes to make himself look even more imposing. Then they used specific camera angles to make him look bigger, and especially in the scenes where he was with Ben Affleck, because Ben Affleck is 6'4", so they wanted Michael Clark Duncan to seem that much more imposing and just like almost towering over him.
Yeah, which is crazy because it makes sense because in the comics, Daredevil isn't. I think he's like supposed to be like a shorter character.
He's more
not.
average. He's more average height.
Yeah, like 5'10", 5'9".
Yeah, he's not this huge character, but Kingpin is this massive. He's a massive person, but even more so than that, it's almost like his reputation is part of his size, whereas he's just so big in every aspect that it almost the way they it's almost like the way they animate him is because of that. Like, whereas he might be just a big person, but because he has this reputation about him, it makes him that much larger than life.
True.
Obviously,
Yeah.
that's not how you can view a human, like a real human being, but
Which
in a
was their
comic
problem.
book,
Which was their problem with casting. Their problem with casting an accurate, like their excuse was that they couldn't find anybody that could match that description. That was a decent enough actor.
it's
So
because it doesn't exist in humanity.
that's why they went with a Michael Clark Duncan, because he was really the only guy that fit the profile and was a good enough actor.
Yeah.
So
Well, and the other thing that I found is it was something like the director told him that he wanted him to gain an extra like 20 pounds
My
for the
God.
role. So Michael Clark Duncan was like, okay, I'll just fucking work out a couple times a day and literally just eat whatever I want.
Yeah, so he probably was walking around at like damn near 400 pounds.
Oh, probably. And it doesn't it doesn't he doesn't look like he's obviously not fat. Like he was in phenomenal shape, but he is so imposing. Like if I ever I mean me personally, I'm 6'2", over 300 pounds myself. But if I ever ran into this guy in a dark alley, I'd be like, no, you know what? I'm good. I'll just see myself out type thing. Like he
Yeah,
just yeah, and and Michael Clark Duncan, he always played such a good-hearted character, but in this movie, he showed how well he could embody that evil, that villain, just that snarl on his face.
yeah, you could tell he definitely enjoyed playing this role and was having fun with it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, even look at like you say that opening scene where he literally just slams the one henchman against the wall, picks the other one up by his neck, and just breaks his neck like with one hand, and it looks like he's swatting a fly.
Yeah, which I believe if you piss that man off hard enough, he could probably do that shit in real life.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't doubt it.
So
I mean,
yeah,
another thing, the thing that I always think of with Michael Clark Duncan, obviously, is many people will agree with this is Armageddon. Um, and the scene at the beginning where Bruce Willis is chasing Ben Affleck with a shotgun. Michael Clark Duncan has this fucking wrench that's got to be 4 feet long, and he just lifts it with one arm onto his shoulder like it's nothing. And it's like that wrench probably weighs 80 to 100 pounds, and he's sitting there holding it like it's a fucking pool cue, like it weighs a pound and a half.
yeah,
That
the man was a genetic monster.
he is truly missed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about how this Daredevil kills people. I will say in the comics, Daredevil was known to kill people. It wasn't. Um,
But he was
he
when
did it
he
when he had to.
yeah,
Now,
and but he would have an existential crisis.
yes, because he is Catholic. He is a very religious character. One of the few very religious characters that I can think of in comic books.
Ben Affleck, Daredevil, this motherfucker was smiling and he enjoyed it. He was
Dude,
making puns.
I wrote the line. He did it twice. So the line when he throw the first guy who gets off on like the rape charge that him and Foggy lose the case at the beginning. I can't remember his name, but he's the one he kills in the subway that he throws on the tracks. He literally he kind of just crouches down and literally just says, "That light at the end of the tunnel, that's not heaven. That's the C train." Like he says that line with enough time that this train isn't even there yet, where
Right?
he could help him up,
Like, you are a
and
hero, bro. Help this man. He's like, nah, bro. I'm gonna just have to let this man die. Shit
that's
was
what he does.
shit was crazy.
And then he does one later in the movie that I'll bring up as well. Um, but yeah, so they've got throughout this when you meet um, the Kingpin, he's talking about something to do with Nachios, which obviously is Elektra's father. You don't really know what it is, but you can tell that it's not going to end well. Like it's not going to end well for Elektra's father, I should say, not the Kingpin, but um, and then he tells his lackey, his henchman, whatever we'll call him, Wesley is his name. He tells him that he basically needs to get somebody there, and this is when you get to see my most enjoyable part of this movie. the man who is absolutely hamming it up every single time he is on screen is Mr. Colin Farrell as Bullseye.
Right? I don't know what direction he had, but the director,
Dude, he had a blast. I can't imagine anybody having more fun filming a movie than Colin Farrell in this movie. And if I believe this was the first movie released in North America where Colin Farrell was actually able to use his own native Irish accent.
yeah, because I think the character technically is Irish or something like that. I think that's why
Yeah.
he was able to. So.
And when you first see him he's in a pub and he's just downing a pint of beer and he's throwing like 6 darts at the bullseye to win a bet.
Yeah, he throws a dart through
a
another.
dart.
Crazy.
Yeah, so he does that to win this bet and the guy calls him out on it. I forget what he says, but it's something obviously that he does not like. So he turns around and it's almost like a magic trick where he reveals like a paper clip and then he straightens it out and he starts throwing him at this guy's throat. And
yeah, and they like laugh at him because they think he's pulling out a gun, but nah,
he pulls out a paper clip.
goddamn paper clips, and he's like, okay, all right, I'm straighten this out right quick.
And then it's when he's wearing a black skull cap, and it's when he pulls that back, and he has
what the fuck is
carved?
Is it a brand?
No, a brand would be raised. This looks like he carved it, and it's.
But there's no.
I don't know what it is, but
it's makeup. That's what it is. But
well, yeah, it's makeup. But
what is it? How can you get that in life? Like, how can you get it?
They could have done it so much better because
have him have a costume.
See, no, because I didn't want him in the I liked him out of the costume, and I'll say this: if you ever look at the Bullseye,
it's stupid.
It's really his costume is really dumb, in my opinion.
Could have made it. You could have made it work. Every costume is considered dumb until somebody nails it. I think they could. I think they should have tried.
So
if I would have learned that they tried and it didn't work, I would feel better.
There is a way to make it cool. Like I've looked at a few of them, and one of them just almost looks like, you remember Cap's uniform in Winter Soldier?
Mm-hmm.
It looks very like the one that I've seen. The concept art of it looks kind of like that, but all charcoal gray or black, and then the mask has the bullseye on the forehead. That would look cool, but again, he's at a bar like this. He's not going to be wearing that out in public. What I think they could have done is just take that skull cap that he's wearing and put a bullseye on it.
I could have done that.
Don't have it carved into his goddamn forehead.
It's fucking weird. At the end of the day, it's just weird.
Well, because
like,
then
what is happening with this?
When he takes the hat off, he like starts rubbing it.
He does it throughout the movie,
like sensually.
He does it throughout the movie.
It's so weird, but
anytime he hits a target or some shit, he rubs the center of his the bullseye of his bullseye,
and then he goes bullseye.
Kind of gets off on it, and it's fucking strange. It's like, bro, you have deep problems.
Well, and then he does this guy, and then he kills the woman on the plane. But I will say, if I had to pick a scene that looks like he had the most fun filming, it looked like he had the most fun filming when he's going through like the TSA checkpoint at the airport.
He kept pulling out paper clips out of his mouth.
Oh, dude, he looked like he was having so much fun. And I couldn't stop laughing because of that.
He kept T-posing.
Oh, yeah.
What the heck? Why T-pose? Like he was going up an escalator, T-posing?
Oh, yeah,
bro.
He does it through most of the movie, which is funny because at the end of the movie, when spoiler alert, the climax of this movie takes place between the two of them in a church, he does like you said, the T pose, almost like the Christ, and then
Oh,
later in that fight, he gets shot through both of his hands. And in my mind, I could have swore that fight went longer. And after he got shot in his hands, he held up his arms and did another one, almost like he had stigmata.
yeah, he started shaking his hands and shit.
Like, I'm surprised with the way that they had Colin Farrell portray this character. It wouldn't surprise me if that was on the table and they just never filmed it.
Right? And it's like they just rushed through. Like, we knew nothing about.
No,
We knew
there's no
nothing.
backstory to him whatsoever. It's just he's a
Backstory,
crazy
no May shit,
assassin.
nothing. He just shows up, rubs the fucking center of his goddamn forehead, throws some shit, and then what we think, until it's revealed later that it didn't, dies at the end of the movie. But he didn't
Yep.
die.
Yeah, he's just kind of framed as a crazy psychotic assassin, which is kind of upsetting because Bullseye is one of Daredevil's big arch nemesis. It's him and Kingpin. So that would almost be like, well, I guess they kind of did it. Well, no, that would almost be like watching Spider-Man and the Green Goblin's the villain, and then Doc Ock is just a guy who shows up maniacally laughing and waving his octopus arms. Like, it's really upsetting the way that he's done that, or that he was portrayed that way, I should say.
Yeah, they did not put any respect on Bullseye as a character.
No.
Unfortunately. But Colin Farrell, for what he was given,
I enjoyed him very much in this film.
enjoyed it, right? Yeah, I agree.
But I enjoyed it more because it just made me laugh, as opposed to it was comic or IP accurate.
Yeah, he was definitely movie villain crazy.
Oh yeah, he just was having fun and kind of playing it up for the camera and things like that. But
I'll take early 2000s Colin Farrell any day of the week. Shout out to SWAT.
Oh God, I love that movie.
Me too. That's just
SWAT good. Phone Booth not so much.
Phone Booth is great.
Phone Booth was suspenseful. It wasn't. That's a topic for another. I'll rewatch it one of these days, and it might be better than I'm giving it credit for. But I remember enjoying it, but not thinking that it was this great, groundbreaking movie or experience. So moving on with this movie, I do like the. I'll try and give some positives where I can. I did like the relationship between Foggy and Matt. I like that they put Jon Favreau in this, this is the movie that kind of got him in the door with Marvel, did get him in the door with Marvel. And I read something somewhere that during this movie, he started to kind of pitch Marvel on him doing a movie, which of course 5 years later would become Iron Man, which would begin the MCU and change, and I like to say ruin, movies for the rest of our lives, because now everything has to be a goddamn franchise. And again, a whole nother topic for another day.
That's not Marvel's fault. Everybody's just trying to copy Marvel. But yeah, we can talk about that.
But yeah, so this is kind of where Jon Favreau had done things before this. He did Swingers. He was in he was in the movie. He was obviously in Rudy. He was in Friends. So he was kind of
Hey. I first was introduced to him as the crazy SWAT guy in The Replacements.
Oh, Danny.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had done that. So he had done some mainstream stuff. So he was at least recognizable, I feel. Whereas now, I mean, the guy's probably one of the most famous people in Hollywood. I mean, he started the MCU. He's the brains behind the Mandalorian and most of what Star
Yeah,
Wars has got going on. Like,
he and Dave Filoni are
yes,
they're both carrying Star Wars on their backs right now.
100%.
You know, so yeah, no, he's done very well for himself since 2003, and
Yeah.
I have nothing but respect for the man.
No, I'm a huge fan of him. I mean, even his acting work I enjoy. Like I said, I like him in this. Foggy's not. There's so much more to Foggy Nelson's character, but they're not going to go into that in a movie, and I get that, which is why I like that they've started that they before it ended on Netflix, and I'm hoping that they will bring whether it be the same actor or a different actor to play Foggy in the Disney Plus Daredevil show. Um, but I liked the way he interacted and the way the two, Jon Favreau and Ben Affleck's chemistry kind of melded together on screen, because they did behave like they were kind of like they were college buddies, which is that's what they're supposed to be. Um, and especially the pranks that they kind of play on each other. Like he tricks Matt into putting mustard into his coffee instead of honey or
He
tea,
poured
whatever he's drinking.
he poured a shit ton of mustard in there. I noticed that. I was, damn, why you put so much in there?
Well, even if he thinks it's honey, like that's a lot of sweetener for your coffee or
There's no
tea.
way, even if you're not blind, you should be able to smell the amount of freaking mustard that he put in there. You could
Well,
at least he's holding the mustard bottle. You could smell the goddamn mustard.
but even not the smell. If you're like, even in that scene, now you have to. So you have to think, number one, that they've gone to this coffee place before. Right? It's got like it's almost like it's close to their office, like it's kind of where they go to think. Or and the honey, the honey bottles are like contoured in the center, whereas the mustard and ketchup bottles are just those ones you see at like a barbecue that are straight up and down. So right there, the feel of them is different. So what I think happened, because eventually Matt switches the cups so that Foggy will be drinking the one with the mustard. I think he knew the whole time
Oh, of
that
course.
he was going to do that. So it other because otherwise it's like, how do you not tell? How can you not tell what you're doing?
He definitely knew. He definitely knew.
He had to have.
Because mustard is such a strong smell, and he was pouring so much of it. I was like, he knew that goddamn shit was mustard.
Yeah, yeah. But those are things that I like with those two and the way they are on screen, and they're kind of arguing about their clients because they're kind of like pro bono lawyers, and Foggy keeps bringing up that people are paying their bills with fish or with sporting equipment or things like that because they don't have a lot of money, but they might own a store, so they can
It's
give them
accurate.
so they can give them some of their merchandise or things like that instead of actual cash.
Yeah, which is accurate to the comics.
Yes.
So I think their first big client that gave them money was they're not going to do it in the movie, but it was the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, they're not going to bring those up.
But that was their first big client. That's when they started getting money.
Yeah.
So beforehand, they were just taking whatever they could instead of money.
Which I find kind of amusing. I mean, it's a little joke, but it's funny, I guess. Um, yeah, so you take that all that stuff into this movie. So at this point, this is kind of where we get to the ball that they go to, or the party, whatever you want to call it, and Matt goes, but he brings Foggy as his plus one, and he sees Elektra there. And oh no, before I'm sorry, we completely skipped over when the two of them get together on the fucking rooftop, and that's where you get the first, like the biggest shot of this radar vision.
The I want to see you scene.
The I want to see you scene. And it's they're on the roof, and he's like, yeah, it's again how she didn't figure out that he was Daredevil or suspected he wasn't blind or something like that, because he looks at her and he talks about that it's going to start raining, and she goes, what are you talking about? It's not going to rain. And he goes, oh yeah, temperature dropped down like 2 degrees in the last 5 minutes. I can smell it. It's gonna start any second. It's like, excuse me, you can smell that it's. What are you talking about?
Yeah, she doesn't really question much.
And then it does what it always seems to do in movies. Have you ever been outside when it starts raining? Because I have, and it never just starts raining just sheets.
It's it's rare, but
Every movie does this. It's like it starts raining and it's like,
all of a sudden it's a
well, what it
downpour.
looks like is it's immediately the sprinklers are all turned on, which
Yeah,
is what happens because you're on a movie
so
set.
there's no warm up or build up. It's just dry and then
Instant pouring.
monsoon rain. Yeah.
Yeah. And the funniest part is it's raining on them for a good 30, 40 seconds. Ben Affleck, stone dry. He is completely bone dry in that.
Really?
Up until he like you see the radar vision, his hair is bone dry.
Good lord. I didn't
But yeah,
notice.
that's when you get the radar vision where you see it all pinging and bouncing off of her face, and he, oh my God, you're so beautiful, and this and that. And I will say they had Ben Affleck wear contacts for this movie that actually they do. I think they blocked out like 80 to 90% of his vision. So he he basically kind of was blind when he was doing this. But I will say that he looks. I think he looks when he has his contacts in and when he takes the sunglasses off. I think he's trying to look like what most people think blind people look like. Because I've known a few blind people in my life, and it could be because his character has like had like a tragic accident or something like that. But most blind people that I've ever known, they still can make normal facial expressions and things like that. He always looks. I don't even know the right word for it, but it's like almost like his eyes are just glazed and he's just like looking straight
Yeah.
up. And
It's only when you see him without when you see his eyes.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, when he that yeah, it's kind of weird because when he
Well,
not
if
when
you're
cased, he doesn't really act like that.
well, if you're blind, it means you can't see. It doesn't mean you can't move your eyeballs.
Right? Close your mouth when you're
That's that's what it is. It's like he's trying so hard to make sure his eyes aren't focusing on anything, and his mouth is just hanging open, like he's got, like as my teachers growing up would say, you've got a mouthful of gum, like just like
yeah, it didn't come across that he was blind. It came across that yeah, he was in a vegetative
pretending to be.
state. Yeah, oh, just not in this in a state that it wouldn't say blind, just something else that it would allure to that I don't want to say because you don't really.
It's not PC.
No, exactly. But no, he looked like not a blind person, but there was something else wrong with him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Very, very much so. Um, now so again, after this, we're at this party where he runs into Elektra again, and I'm not even gonna go into the whole Coolio subplot right now because it's not overly important to the way this movie shapes up. Except the fact that Coolio's great.
Yeah, it's just a a case that they decide to take on because he knows he's
Because he
innocent,
listens to his heartbeat.
and then
Which I
basically,
kind of say, which I kind of feel is cheating for a lawyer. As much as I love Daredevil, I feel that if you can sense whether or not the person on trial is lying or telling the truth because you can hear their heartbeat, I think that's cheating.
it's not submissible to court, but it is a hell of an advantage. It's almost a cheat, but hey,
I will make one question. What kind of lawyers are they?
the criminal defense.
Are you sure? Because
I mean, that's how he always was
well,
in the con.
so they're defense lawyers with Coolio, but in the earlier scene, they're on behalf of the girl who was raped, and
Ooh,
they're trying to go after the guy who raped her.
well,
And they can't prosecute unless they're members of the DA's office. Which, if you're a member of the DA's office, you cannot be a defense attorney because they're on two different sides.
oh,
So I kind of was curious about that as I was watching the movie, going, wait a second. Earlier in the movie, you're trying to get this guy. It almost looked like a civil suit, whereas because both her and the guy they were going after were both kind of sitting at the table at the desk with the lawyers. So it didn't look like a criminal trial, but so I don't know what that exactly was, if they were trying to get um, like them to pay damages to their client or whatever it was. But yeah, I just had that kind of question that I had never noticed in the times that I had previously watched this film.
mhm.
But
Oh,
sorry, I bring up, we were at, like I said, we were at this party where he gets to see Elektra again, and then she gets kind of ushered out because her dad gets a warning from, I forget if it's Wesley or actually Kingpin, and he kind of knows that they need to get out of there because something bad's going to happen. And sure enough, as they're leaving, Elektra and her father in a limo, and we get to see this is again a great scene with Colin Farrell because he has stolen somebody's motorcycle and he's now riding down the street. And as he gets closer to the destination that he is going to, he full on just stands on the seat of the bike. And in the movie, he's got a belt buckle that produces like ninja stars. And he uses these to kill both security guards, the driver and the security guard in the passenger seat of this limo. And then the limo crashes, and presumably his target is Elektra's father, possibly Elektra herself as well. Um, However, once the limo crashes, he's intercepted by Daredevil, and the two of them have a fight, another really bad fight between the two of them until
yeah. This is this the CG is noticeably horribly bad in two parts of this scene. One is when they first make contact with each other by Daredevil kicking and flipping. Uh,
yeah, that's bad. He a blind. I get that you have superhuman senses. Doesn't mean you have superhuman reaction time to go with those senses.
yeah, and yeah, the CG just it was terrible. And also at the just before the kill shot where Bullseye throws somehow gets a hold of the Daredevil's cane, throws it as Daredevil is about to catch it. You know, the radar sense goes off, like something explodes. But just after
I
when
think
he's
it's the
in,
motorcycle that explodes.
yeah, and then it goes in a radar scene. But just after that, when you see him miss the baton, is one of the worst, most horrible CG scenes I think I have ever seen in my life. It looked horrible. Like the
Yeah,
background,
it looked really bad.
the shot of Daredevil reaching for it looked fuzzy, and then the CG looked like a goddamn cartoon, something out of like Reboot, and it is stand out bad, like bad.
Yeah. But it's funny because this is before he throws the baton. This is the scene that, and it's one of the lines that I always laugh so hard at whenever I've watched or thought of this movie. And I'm not going to do the accent because I can't do Colin Farrell's accent. But it's I think it's he throws the one ninja star, and apparently nobody else has ever thought of when Bullseye throws something at you to kind of move.
See it because I get out of the
Because
way.
I mean, not that I could do it like this, but all he does is he dodges the ninja star, and the look on Colin Farrell's face when he says, "I missed, I never miss." Like he literally looks like this has never happened in my entire, and he doesn't know how to deal with it. And it's the one of the funniest things in this movie to me is just his bewilderment of how do I deal with the fact that I missed. Like my name's Bullseye, I can't miss.
Seeing a man who's mentally broken have a mental breakdown was was pretty interesting to see on screen. I'll tell you that. And yeah, he can't shake the fact that he missed Daredevil that one time.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting with the way this goes.
Yeah, yeah. He definitely took it personally.
Well, you see it later. I mean, you see the scene later in the movie when he's in Fisk's office, Kingpin's office, and he's telling him that he's mine, the devil is mine, and he goes, and it's one of those things where it's like you see in an action in a movie where they're trying to make something really seem important and like take a breath between every word, and he's like, he made me miss. And it's like, I, I get that that's your name and it's your whole identity type thing, but it's one time, dude. Like, like you say, a mentally ill person having a mental breakdown is exactly what he is the rest of this movie.
Right? He's off the hinges already, and it was like, yeah, he,
But but
he
I
def-
will say one of the most memorable scenes of this movie comes after Elektra's father is killed, and it's the Evanescence fueled workout montage where she's
oh,
using a pair of size,
oh, that
which
music video,
with the other music video exactly,
music
which
video.
if it's really Jennifer Garner with those size at the beginning of the scene, she looks great using those because
I think it was. I wouldn't
if
doubt it. There's a lot of close-up shots of her using the size, and it looked like yeah, I think she did put
that's
them
what
on.
I thought too. That to me is very impressive.
And she did do Alias, where she was a spy, so I think she probably had a lot of training already
It's
on
possible.
on top of the specific choreography with this. I think, yeah, I think it's all mostly her.
It's very possible, and if so, I was very impressed with that. I will say, but this whole scene, I mean, to begin with, and we haven't even brought it up. The soundtrack of this movie is just like B level new metal
It's
from
very
the
emo.
early 2000s, and
It's very emo.
yeah, and this song just kind of caps it off. They play
I like this song.
I I won't say I won't say I hate it, but to me it's one of those things. It's always associated with this movie and this
hell,
scene in particular.
hell yeah.
And this
As it
scene is so bad.
bad.
Oh my god, it's so terrible.
She's beating the shit out of them sandbags. She's cutting them up, stabbing them and shit. What you talking about?
Because that's how you have to train to fight a world-class martial artist, is just to have sandbags on ropes drop from the ceiling.
And you stab them. Because
Oh, and
that's
and don't forget, one of them has his face painted on there.
exactly. See, that's important.
It's really not.
No, they get. One of my negatives is the absolute. Not only did they have zero respect for Bullseye, but even more so, negative zero respect for Elektra.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Elektra's badass in the comics.
She's one of the greatest hand-to-hand combatants in the Marvel universe.
Well,
Not this movie.
well, also because she has a backstory. In this movie, she's just a pretty girl whose dad was killed by a mob boss. That's
Right? And
literally her. That's literally her whole character. Whereas in the movie, she is a badass assassin
yeah, she's one of the
who's
toughest.
part of. And then there's the whole thing with her involvement with the hand, and which is a whole other thing that people that people won't understand unless they've read the comics or watched the show or things like that. Because again, it's another integral part of Daredevil comics that's not mentioned in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. I will say one of the things that again, we're going to try and find positives where I can. One of the positives I will give to this movie is they don't pay much attention to her character, but they pay a lot of attention to her death.
Yeah, they just ripped one thing that happened in the comics, which is her death.
And it's identical. Right down to it's her and it's her and Daredevil are fighting, and she stabs him in the shoulder, and then I'm gonna find out who it was that killed my father, and she takes the mask off and she finds out that it's Matt, and she's horrified with herself.
Yeah, and Matt's doing this open mouth
Oh
breathing.
yeah, it's
And the acting, dialogue, it's not even the acting, it's just the dialogue. It's just the dialogue is fucking terrible.
no, I will say it's the acting too, because you've got these two people who are supposedly supposed to be in love, and yet it looks like one telling the other that their library book is late.
And really they shouldn't be in love because these motherfuckers just met the other day.
Yeah, they barely known each other a week.
There shouldn't be no love, but they make you feel like these
I
motherfuckers.
mean, you know what? Crazier things have happened. They do say love at first sight is a thing, but now I can't believe it with these two, with the like I said, the lack of chemistry that they
Yeah,
have together.
they
But
didn't build it up to where you would make it, you would believe that
which,
feel
like I say, is so funny because they got married in real life.
right. Well, and eventually divorced. So,
True.
a it
So yeah, she stabs him and then realizes it's Matt, and she feels terrible. So she says, "I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get Bullseye and this and that." And now the scene that I'm talking about that they basically took directly um, from the comics is I I had it at one time, the exact comic book issue, but I can't remember it. So it's the death of Elektra. It's Daredevil number 181 is I believe is the actual comic of. Yeah, it's on the cover. It says Bullseye versus Elektra. One wins, one dies, and it came out in April of 1982. And the scene If you watch the movie, he stabs her with her own sai. And the whole iconic part of it is he lifts her off the ground just like he does in the movie. And the whole thing is the back of her outfit, costume, top, whatever you want to call it, doesn't rip. Like it just kind of is pushed out by the side blade. And the reason that is because when the comic came out, they weren't allowed to show. I forget if it's they weren't allowed to show too much blood or if it was they weren't allowed to show blood from because it was a man assaulting a woman, or it was something to do with how graphic the actual book was that they couldn't do it. So that was the way that they did it to show in the comics that it did pierce through her body, was it pushed her costume out. And the effect in the movie, especially if you're a fan of the comic books or if you've read that particular comic or seen that picture, it is very effective and it worked really well and it looked really cool. I will say that.
For sure. You know, it definitely had a lot of very wire worky, but it was effective.
Wow, there was a part of this movie that I praised more than you.
It was fine. I just the fact that they killed, like, she's supposed to be
They gave her nothing and then just killed her.
nothing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they just introduce her. You know, she's in a few scenes and then they kill her.
Well, that's the whole thing. Is they introduce her. The way they even every time she comes in the show in the movie is like, oh, she's so hot, dude. Like, she's such a hot chick, and like when she comes into the coffee shop, that's how Foggy, like he's just like mouth agape staring at her. When they go to the ball, he says to Matt, like, I wish you could have my eyes for one night because she looks so good. Foggy's never spoke to this woman. He has no idea what type of person she is, if she's smart, if she's funny, nothing. He just knows that she's nice to look at.
Oh yeah.
And as an audience member, I'd argue that that's pretty much all we know about her too.
Pretty much.
Which again is a big slap in the face to the fans of the IP and what Elektra could or should have been and how she should have been portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
So this fight after the death of her, now it has to be the big climactic fight with Bullseye and Daredevil, which ends up being in a church, which I will again praise something from this movie, and it's when you see and again, this is going to remind you probably a lot of Batman too, looking down over the city, but when you see the close-up when they go to the church and you see Daredevil kind of I guess he's kind of hugging almost the cross, kind of perched at the base of it, holding on to it. That's a visual you see a lot in the comics. And I like that they added that into this movie as another little homage to the way the character's been done in the books.
Yep.
But then you follow that up with, and we forgot to say, this movie actually starts at this point, and the whole thing is a flashback of him. Oh, they say your life flashes before your eyes when you die and things like that, which apparently his life meant when he got his powers, skip 15 years when he met Hot Girl, the end.
Yeah, that's a good summary.
But so this is a really sad, like, yeah, he's been kind of beat to shit, but it's when he lowers himself with his baton right onto the altar of the church and just kind of drops, like he's so beaten down and exhausted he can't even hold himself up for another second and just drops, and the priest comes out, and this is when you get the Colin Farrell coming into the church with the arms wide, and the two of them fight on and this is where I was getting to with the horrific CGI is this goddamn organ fight. It's so the entire sequence is CGI.
There's a whole lot going on for sure.
And they make it seem like this organ is 25 stories high. Like there's a scene they're up just in reality they're probably 15 feet off the ground. The camera shows from the top down and it looks like it's 200 feet. It's insane. And I'm like, you guys are at the first level and this organ has multiple levels of these pipes. And by the time they get to the top, you would think that they're halfway up the Empire State Building.
Right? Like leaping up and up and up, and the fucking organ's still going. I'm like, wait a minute. Hey, why you wait?
Well, that was my other thing is I'm watching this, I'm going, Ben Affleck literally leaps to like the second floor of this church. And I went, hang on. All that he got when he was blinded was enhanced senses. Not like actual superpowers of jumping, running, flying, things like that. How is he jumping to the balcony of the second floor? That makes no sense.
No. Unless he's never skips leg day.
Or he's just so upset and enraged about his 2-day-old girlfriend.
That's probably both those things.
So this is when the two of them fight, and there's cops setting up because the priest has called the cops. And Colin Farrell uses his belt-buckled ninja stars that Matt dodges all of them, and then he proceeds to break a stained glass window and catches all the shards, which, again, Bullseye doesn't have those types of powers. Bullseye is not super powered. He's just a marksman.
Yeah, that's his only gift.
Like, he's a marksman with throwing things, too, but in this scene, it's like he has super speed, catching all of these shards of the stained glass window and stacking them in his hands, and then he starts throwing them, and again, Ben Affleck dodges every one of them. The two of them get in another really poorly choreographed, slow motion, it seems, hand-to-hand combat fight, which culminates in, like I said, he gets shot in the hands by a sniper, and then Matt throws him out a stained glass window onto a character who we haven't even discussed yet, Joe Pantoliano, who plays Ben Urich, the journalist. Bullseye lands on his car, and again, you mentioned he has one-liners. Do you know what he does here?
I forget what he says.
He leans out the window and goes, "Bullseye."
Oh yeah, he did. Okay, I remember that part. Yeah.
Dude, I almost fell out of my chair. I'm like, no, you didn't just do that, did you, screenwriter?
Should have rubbed his head. That would have been funny.
I mean, if you're gonna do it, you might as well, in for a penny, in for a pound, make it as ridiculous as you can at that point. I get that it's a comic book and it's already ridiculous, but I mean, come on.
Yeah, and Matt had every intention to kill.
Oh, he meant to kill him. I am 100% convinced.
Even though it didn't happen, he thought and his intentions were to kill this motherfucker.
Because I'm sorry, if I'm throwing you,
would check that off one of the people he not technically didn't kill, but he thought he did.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, if I'm throwing you off a second or third story, or out of a second or third story window, I am intending to kill you. Like, you know what I mean? Like he knew what he was doing. He follows it up with the one-liner. He knows what he was doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He did not care.
No, and he doesn't stick around. He just, all right, I'm out. And then we get the climactic ending with him and Kingpin. See, there are so many fucking storylines in this goddamn movie that have to be wrapped up. The ending, like you said, it is. It's so rushed.
Yeah, it's super rushed, and the movie benefited on an extra 30 minutes not involving a subplot with Coolio.
Yeah, it should have had more. I mean, that,
More
like I say,
to flesh out everything.
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about that. So he gets um, to Kingpin's office, which me growing up in the 90s, as you did as well, all I could think about when this happened, and I couldn't stop laughing, was Armageddon. And I was like, oh, Bear and AJ gonna go at it.
No, yeah, I knew they were in that movie together, but it didn't click for me at all.
You know what? It didn't until like this time I rewatched it. I might have thought of it before, but I really thought of it when I was rewatching it for this. Is my note actually says, no, Bear can't fight AJ. What would Harry say?
Right? No, but yeah, it's
But again,
the fight scene in this one is I liked it. Is
I
well,
liked it because of Michael Clark Duncan.
Oh, yeah.
Affleck's not bad, but it's Michael Clark Duncan who does good. Like, and I have a note here that I put. I believe that Michael Clark Duncan can do all these physical things. Like he's throwing Ben Affleck 8-9 feet across the room, like lifting him clear over his head and just tossing him like he's a bag of flour. But I believe Michael Clark Duncan was doing all those things for real, whether it be to Ben Affleck or his stunt double.
Yeah, get that man angry enough. He will show you, or he would have shown you, very similar moves that he does in this movie.
And what I didn't understand is Matt comes to the realization that if he somehow gets the sprinklers to come on, it will recreate the type of moment that he had with Elektra on the rooftop, where he's able to see more clearly. So he figures if he turns them on, he can see Kingpin more clearly and have a better chance of beating him. Yet I don't know how he does it, because he's like crouched against a wall, and then it's like he rips a light off the wall, and all of a sudden the sprinklers all come on and the lights all turn off. I don't know what really happened, because in a lot of movies, if you want the sprinklers to turn on, you see somebody pull a fire alarm or like hold a lighter up to a fire alarm, something like that. It seems like he just pulls a light off a wall, unless I missed something.
I have to rewatch it. I don't remember how the lights went out, but I know that it did.
I have no real idea. I mean, I just remember it looked like he pulled almost like a fluorescent bulb off the wall, and the sprinklers just came on, which was weird. But he uses that to his advantage, and he ends up breaking. I think he breaks both of his knees or both of his legs.
Oh yeah, he fucking breaks both his goddamn knees. He kicks him right in the knees. Very disrespectful. Fuck. Because Michael Clark sells that shit.
Oh, the scream he gives, and they kind of like slow motion the scream, and it's like agonizing.
Kicks him in the knees, and then he falls down onto his
on the knees.
Like, oh my god!
I thought the same thing.
Shit was brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, and then basically I think that's just kind of all it is, because he ends up defeating Kingpin. He has no intentions, it seems, of killing Kingpin, though. Because he just kind of leaves him for the cops. Like, Whereas like Bullseye, he throws out a goddamn window. With the other guy, he lays him on a subway track.
His quota for murder was filled that day, that night.
It must have been, but it wasn't though, because as we're about to find out, Bullseye survives.
He's in a fucking full body cast. He can only move his mouth.
Oh no, he moves his fingers to get that fucking syringe to throw at a goddamn fly.
Oh, he threw it with his hands? I thought he threw it with his mouth or some shit.
I don't know what because you don't see it. You see him in a full body cast, and basically his eyes and his mouth are unbandaged, and there's a fly just buzzing around his face.
I thought his hands were up.
I don't know. I thought they were two at first. Maybe it's got to be just one of them, because it then shows his fingers like right next to a tray with like instruments on it, and one of the instruments is a syringe, and he's just kind of like almost like pulling the paper that everything's sitting on.
Right? Like, wait a minute.
And then you just see the guards outside the room, and you hear like a thud that sounds like a dart hitting a wall. And then it just shows the syringe is stuck into this fly. And I'm pretty sure he says Bullseye again.
Definitely does.
Or he says, I never miss, or something like that.
He said Bullseye, man. He said Bullseye. He could barely speak. He couldn't make it out, but I'm pretty sure he said Bullseye.
Yeah, that's fucking wild. How they expect people to kind of believe that happened, but
they were possibly teasing at a sequel if the movie was somewhat successful.
But that's what I mean. The movie was successful. It made $100 million profit worldwide.
It depends what the studio's expectation was probably not met, hence why they didn't get.
True, because there are things set up, because you see like
it didn't hit Spider-Man numbers, which that's probably what they wanted.
No, but you can see like what's his name? You can see Kingpin in like a prison cell and things like that, because it is like they're trying to set that up. Whereas like he's there thinking of revenge, and he's going to come after him and all this other stuff. And then the Bullseye setup, like, oh, he's not dead. He could come back. Like, I think that's absolutely what they were doing. It's just that movie never got and never will get made.
Yeah.
But, and I mean, after that, it's just a whole thing of Joe Pantoliano's character kind of going up and telling, oh, we completely missed, and I have to talk about this. I'm so sorry I missed this. But earlier in the movie, it shows how Joe Pantoliano's character kind of figures out that Matt is Daredevil. And it's a cameo scene with somebody that I am a massive, massive fan of, and that is Kevin Smith.
Yeah, a writer of a Daredevil.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah, it's not surprising he had a cameo in this for a few reasons. He plays, I think he's a coroner.
Yep.
And because he's examining the body of Nicholas Nachios, Electra's father, and he calls Ben, Joe Pantoliano's character, because he has the baton of Daredevil, and he's kind of going through it, and he's showing him all the cool things that it can do, and you kind of realize that Ben figured out that it's him, because earlier in the movie he has a run-in with Matt where he comments on the color of the cane that Matt carries. But yeah, Kevin Smith, like you say, Kevin Smith is I know he's a massive Daredevil fan, and he has written several Daredevil comic books. And he's actually, if you watch any of those Evening with Kevin Smith specials or DVDs, whatever you want to call them. He has a story of they were supposed to film, I think it was Jersey Girl with Ben Affleck, because him and Ben Affleck are good buddies, and they were supposed to film Jersey Girl or something, but that was the time that he was going to do Daredevil, and Kevin Smith was one of the people who had told him, like suggested him that he do Daredevil and all these other things, and so it was something like one of them agreed to do a favor for the other, or they switched their filming times around, or however it was, so that their schedules could match up, so he could end up filming both movies. But it's not a surprise at all that Kevin Smith is in this. Like I say, he's done several books, and he's a huge fan of the character in general. But as a big fan of him myself, it was kind of nice to see him in a movie, and he is of the more, how shall I say, rotund version of himself. This was many years before his heart attack that he suffered, so he was a much larger. He was more Silent Bob version as opposed to Instagram Kevin Smith.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciated it. I appreciate that scene.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it, because it basically, I brought that up because Ben basically goes up at the end of the movie to Matt, and he kind of tells him that he's figured it out and he's going to run this story, and Matt's like, you can't, please don't do that. Like, you can't run a story that basically outs me as Daredevil. And he says, I'm a reporter, like that's my job. And then well, that's pretty much what it is just deal with it. And then 30 seconds later, it shows him reading the story that he's written, and he just deletes it. Like, yeah, no, he's right. I'll just let him. You know what I mean? Like, I'll break my word and screw what I had told him in this exclusive story that could win me a fucking Pulitzer Prize type thing.
Yeah.
And then I don't like the way it ends with it's like it's Matt is on top of a building, and he's literally looking down at Joe Pantoliano, and he just kind of nods, and it zooms in on Joe Pantoliano, and he just says, go get him, Matt. And that's how the movie ends. And I didn't like that at all. Like, find a better way to end the movie. That was so, I don't know. It felt like the ending of a kid's cartoon show, which I guess fits the description because it is a comic book, and a lot of people view comic books as stories for kids, things like that. But I personally didn't like the way they did that. And then the best part of the movie, the credits roll, and we no longer have to watch any more of this god awful movie.
I could have went for a sequel. I liked it. Like I said, for me personally, the bad outweighs the good, but the parts that do work, that are good, it saves the movie for me, and it makes it a halfway decent, entertaining movie.
Okay. I will say that overall, I did not enjoy the movie. I didn't enjoy the movie in 2003. I do not enjoy the movie I also did my math wrong. It's 21 years this year, not 20. But I did not enjoy the movie in 2024. There are aspects of it that I don't mind, that I find entertaining. But for me, the good does not outweigh the bad, because the good is so few and far between. And again, I think a lot of my dislike or vitriol towards this movie has a lot to do with the fact that I am a fan of the character in general, and as you had put it, the lack of respect given to a lot of these characters, these situations, is very evident when you watch this. If you know any kind of the backstory or origins of any of these characters, and that really bothers me because, again, a lot of my childhood, I read a lot of Daredevil. They were, as I said, they were the first group of comics, the first character I ever owned, and I think that you create a bond with that character to the point where when they're in a film like this, you anticipate it so much, and then it comes out and it's not exactly what you were hoping for. It kind of upsets you, and that's kind of where I felt, kind of where I came down on with this.
I get it.
So, personally, I would not recommend this film. I think this actually might be the first movie that we've done that I haven't said that I would recommend. I can't remember about some of the earlier ones, but I wouldn't recommend this. I would say that there are clips that it would be worth you looking up, maybe on YouTube or things like that, and a lot of that would be the Michael Clark Duncan stuff, just for the sheer power of his character, and the Colin Farrell stuff because it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But if I had to give this movie a rating, I would be right in line with the Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb. I would probably go. I'm going to say a 5 out of 10. I can't give it more. I originally wanted to give it lower, but then I thought I was being a little too harsh. But I'm going to give this a 5 and say if I'd skip it, save the 2 hours of your life and go do something else.
I think I would. I wouldn't recommend it personally because my guilty pleasure are what people say are terrible movies. I only would recommend it to people who like a group of friends watching it and either making a drinking game out of it or just watching it for the sheer point of roasting it.
I would do a drinking game out of it. That sounds fun.
Other than that, I can't really recommend it for people. But my score isn't much higher than yours. I give it a 6, which for me,
Wow. Okay. I you know what? Maybe I was too generous then.
but still, like, I enjoy a lot of 6 movies. This is just one of them.
And you know what? I enjoy a lot of movies like that too. But again, it's because of the previous connection to the IP.
No, I get it. Yeah, your bias couldn't allow you to enjoy it.
No. I mean, I didn't think Ben Affleck was he was terrible with the glasses were off. When he had the mask on or the sunglasses were on, I didn't think he was awful. But again, like you said, a lot of the issues were the dialogue and the directing. It wasn't necessarily the acting performances because they were doing the best they could with what was put on paper for them. It was very similar to other movies that people get ripped apart for, and they call it bad acting when in reality it's more bad writing than bad acting.
Mm-hmm.
But the actors are the ones that people notice and recognize, so those are the ones who get blamed.
Yeah. But. Exactly. So you see him in a better movie, then you know that it wasn't the actor, it was more so the other things.
Yeah, because like I say, I've seen all of these actors in other movies, and they're great. It's just this movie they didn't have it, and then
yeah, there's only so much you can do with poop material.
So that's our episode on Daredevil. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you guys decide to take the time out of your lives and watch it, let us know what you think. Let us know if you're a 5 or a 6. Hell, you might be a 10. I don't know. Let us know what you think about it, and if you think we were being too harsh or if you think we were being fair on our assessments of this movie. And if you guys would like to do that and contact us about anything like that, whether it be this or anything we've done in the past or something you might want to hear from us in the future, please do follow us on. We have accounts on Twitter or X at geeked_podcast with a capital G. You can reach us by email at geekedoutpod@gmail.com. Instagram is geekedoutpod. We are also on YouTube at Geeked Out Podcast. And follow us. Just follow us, rate us, review us. Let us know what you guys are thinking, and we'll do our best to take all of your suggestions into account. So we will see you guys next week, and as usual, thank you for listening and thank you for subscribing. Take care.
Peace.